Today on Honestly Dear Listener, we're talking to singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Olivia K, fearless leader of Olivia K and the Parkers, about art as protest and how to take care of ourselves as we move through difficult moments affecting our communities. We're two childhood best friends talking with another friend today about creative mindset.
I'm Emily Hatch.
And I'm Carrie Schaefer, and this is Honestly Dear Listener.
Honestly, dear listener.
Woo! Emily, tell us more about Olivia K.
The K in Olivia K, Kara, means daughter of the sun, which perfectly describes her music, her joyous outlook on life, and fiery disposition. Her performance art and musical sensibility combines the boundless energy of the Brooklyn West Indian Day Parade with the soulfulness of the Baptist church she grew up in. A proud, lifelong Brooklynite, except for 4 years uptown at Columbia University, her iconic voice and original writing can be heard on Netflix, BET, and MTV, as well as in commercials and, most unusually, A Fire Escape in NYC. As the DIY funk queen of East New York, she has led her band Olivia K and the Parkers in a sold-out show at Joe's Pub, joined the 2022 Joe's Pub Working Artists Group, and played the Bricks' iconic Celebrate Brooklyn and Brooklyn Museum, and featured by the Lincoln Center. Her anthem, Native New Yorker, is archived in the permanent archives of Brooklyn Academy of Music and was heard on the Showtime series Flatbush Misdemeanors.
Damn.
Join me in welcoming my amazing friend, Olivia. Hello, Olivia.
Hey,
Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, so how do you all know each other?
we met on a gig. About maybe a year or so ago, we were on a wedding gig, and Emily's kind of, "Hi, like, hey, how's it going?" Like, I don't know, and then she just opened her mouth, and I
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
"Ah, nice." Like,
Mhm.
I love that. She's like, "I don't know, what do you think?" I'm like, "I think it's gonna be fine." And it was like, and it was so funny because I love like Emily's like has such a sweet spirit. But I was like, "Girl, like you got this, like 100%."
Yeah.
It's delicious. It was an amazing time.
I have totally noticed that at gigs. Like, she comes in with, like, the shock and awe, and she never means to do it. She's not like, "I'm gonna be, like, really, like, oh, I don't know," and then, like, basically, like, blow everyone out of their seats. But
Yeah.
she does do that, and I have noticed that, and I think it's really cool, like, being her friend and being there and, like, witnessing it because you get to be like, "Yeah, what's up? That's my friend." And,
And
like
to be fair, I wanna voice that what was really happening was Emily was taking care of, like, 5 things that were happening
Uh-huh.
for the band, and she's like, "Do you need something? Is this going on?" Like, she had a suitcase with the most backup stuff I'd ever seen in my life. Like, I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Oh, I have a steamer. Oh, I have a this. Oh, I have a that." And I was like, "Oh." So and she was, "Oh, I have snacks." I was like, and because, usually, like, you get on the gig, they're kinda like, "I actually don't know where you should put your stuff. I don't have anything. I'm sorry to guess and hope it works out." And Emily was, like, a notable difference in a sea of wedding gigs that I've had.
Aw,
Yeah.
you
That's
guys,
my friend.
I I really just brought people here to talk about no. Thank you so much. That was a big, beautiful surprise. Thank you. Yeah, it was so we were singing, like, rehearsing harmonies and doing all this cool stuff that I don't always get to do on gigs, and, like, singing harmony with Olivia and, like, oh my god, it was just I was like, "Can we just do this?" This whole time and just, like, tuck into these blanket harmonies. Olivia is such a freaking powerful performer, and you know that it is hard. I probably shouldn't say this because we're both doing wedding gigs, but it is hard to show up as, like, an artist when you're singing Valerie for the 50th time for a
Right?
group of people, but somehow, even in that, Olivia is just absolutely, like, mind-blowing. Your energy, your talent is insane even in that environment. So, like, right, we had a couple gigs or maybe 1 gig, I don't know, and then Olivia hosts a jam. Would you wanna tell everybody
Yeah,
about the jam?
yeah, sure. So I host a jam called the Women's Jam, and Surprisingly, it is the first of its kind. Like,
What?
literally, like, that's crazy. Like, there must have been other women jamming before, and they just said, "Come to my house," because,
Right.
like, that just doesn't make sense to me, but, the focus, we do it once a month in, Bushwick, and we actually one of the big things is to get a woman behind every instrument and to break the system, but rebuild it better, and our big thing is especially actually kind of reforming what jam culture is like because it is a bro fest and it tends to be
Mm.
a lot of, egos throwing around and people vibing each other and a lot of times women in those spaces are often mistreated in different ways, whether it's the misogyny piece, like, whether you're being sexualized, whether you're being assumed that you don't know what you're doing, any version in between. And we
Mhm.
wanted to create a space that would be actually safe for women to show up and really expand as instrument players, as musicians, as singers, and be heard
Mhm.
in the community. And so we do it once a month. It's very important that people know it centers women, centers femme, non-binary folks, but it also it's important that people know that everyone can come because it's actually our goal not to actually make a girls club. Our goal is to actually create an equitable system where we all can make space for each other and take space for ourselves. So, yeah,
Mm.
that's us. That's the women's jam.
Oh
It
gosh, I
is
love that.
it's so rad, and getting to be in the room, like, it makes me emotional. I was like, so Olivia did, like a workshop kind of beforehand to really welcome everyone and be like, "Let's go, like, just try stuff." And, I I was like, "This is really powerful, really, truly." And I got on stage. It's like one of the times in my life that I can remember that I just really laid an egg, as far as, like, I don't know how to make up, like, I could play the piano a little, that's fine. "Oh, we're changing chords. I'm really nervous. Okay." But then I don't know how to make stuff up with other people
Mm.
on the spot. Like, I write, but it's more of a, like, controlled kind of feeling, and I just, like, blanked the fuck out. I was just singing, like, little pieces of covers, and Olivia starts just like, "Hey, just say what's coming into your head," and I'm like, "I got nothing in my head." And so she started singing, and we just, like, vibed for a while, and then I watched all these amazing women come up and freestyle,
Mm.
sing. It was incredible, and then Olivia just, like, sits down in this chair with her mic and just sings this insanely gorgeous story, you know? And
Mm.
I'm like, I'm just so inspired. So that's how we met, and we've done some gig stuff together since. But I really like, because Olivia, because you are such a force. uh, I mean, and you affect everyone around you. It's so apparent. We really wanted to talk to you about kind of the vibe of things right now and how creatives are dealing, like, yeah, it's a big topic.
No, it's deep. I mean, I really this is such an interesting time because for me, I feel like I've always assumed that this day would come somehow.
Mm.
It's a weird thing, and I'm gonna try and be like I'm gonna try and be clear and also succinct in a way so that we can just paint a picture because it is such a deep it's everything we're talking about touches everything else.
Yeah.
So it's a tough topic because it's like you can go so many directions. But what's important, um, as a person, I grew up here in New York, and I've been a singer-songwriter at least since I was 12 years old that I can remember. I remember doing my first show, the first, like, show of my own music when I was 17 at the Bitter End with the New York Songwriters Collective, which I
Ah,
found on the internet. I don't know how I did that, but I
which is
found that on the internet.
the show I just talked about last week on the podcast.
Oh,
So
wow.
so when I posted that, I forgot, Olivia's like, "Oh, so that was your first show."
My first
Amazing.
show as a person as a and I, played the piano and I sang all these songs and, But even from the very beginning of my career, um, and that was like, over 15 years ago, but at the even at that point in my career, I was already dealing with a lot of things, both in both topics. What First of all, I was dealing with a lot of racialized issues as a young woman, as a teenager, in my high school. I went to this all-girls school, and I gotta tell you, like, all-girls school is really funny because the goal in some ways is, people try to be like, "This is a place where a girl can really, show up and be herself because there's no men, there's no boys in the room, so she's gonna be more authentic." And I think there's some truth to that, but I think the other side of that is, we're all a part of the patriarchy, like, it's a part of us, and we replicate it unintentionally all the time, and so an all-girls school does the same thing. It does it
Mm.
differently, like, you can everyone like, okay, so the girls were the presidents, and there was no homecoming real well, there was homecoming, but there were no boys, so, like, you imagine if you take the sort of sexual tension of high school out of it in terms of that kind of, like, jockeying for position, but, there's always a new problem, like, girls wanted the teachers to think they were smart. Girls
Mm.
had crushes on the male teachers, like, and then there were queer girls living their lives, which I don't know who they were, but I know they were doing it. And, but what I found in that dynamic was at that time, I was already kind of becoming the person I am today, which was I felt very trapped. And I think a lot of girls felt very trapped in the way that a lot of girls took that inward. I knew a lot of girls who were cutting or anorexic or like
Mm.
dealing with a lot of crazy stuff. And I took it outward and I just was like, I'm just gonna write a lot of poetry and like I'm gonna like do guerrilla art in my school. And people thought I was really strange for most of my high school experience. Like, that girl is weird. Like, I overheard people talking
Mm.
about me and I was like, all right, like, y'all don't like me. Fuck you too.
Mm.
Um, but but I was really it felt like being myself was the act of resistance in a
Mm.
Mm.
very cookie cutter place because it wasn't an art school. So, like, that's the other thing was, like, it was very academic. It was very, like, "We're trying to get you into Harvard." Like, that was the mentality,
Mm.
and I was like, we're full of people." Like, I am more than just this classwork, and I was not doing well in class. I was like, "I'm definitely more than this," and I had, like, a profound depression as in that in, like, 10th grade, and
Mm.
art became my answer. Like, Freddie
Mm.
Mercury was, like, my salvation, and, like, just, Michael Jackson and, like, all these things all these people who were, like, totally themselves, like, fully
Mhm.
expressed, and those are the people for me. Of course, there are many other people, um, but at that time, I used to just do guerrilla like, event production. So I would just, like, do school events and, like, get sign forms and be like, "I'm gonna get this" like, "Okay, we're gonna have a dance party," and I would just, like, announce it, and, like, 5 people would come because they were all like, "This is weird," but
Mm.
I like that this girl's like they were like I was a sophomore, they were seniors, and they were
Mm.
like, "This girl's got some guts, like, we're gonna go to this girl's event." Like, that was kind of how it started for me, and,
Mm.
I say that I don't talk about that time in my life a lot, but I think it's really the seeds of everything that came to pass because I was also dealing with a lot of vocal issues at that time.
Mm.
Turns out this whole time I've just been, like, allergic to a lot of stuff.
Mm.
I literally found this out, like, last year. Like, I was eating a chocolate bar a day when I was lactose intolerant, and I, like, couldn't breathe, like, a lot of the time,
Oh my god.
but I just didn't like, the things just didn't connect for me, and so, but I also was having a simultaneous experience of feeling like the walls were closing in on me,
Mm.
and so a lot of my music was initially about becoming myself.
Mm.
Being like, "I'm a black girl. I'm gonna sing these songs. This is about me loving myself." Just the kind of like the personal revolution. So, like a lot of my songs, one of my songs that I used to sing a lot was called That Afro. It's just about my afro and how much I love it and how great it is. And people are like, that's so someone's like, "Did you mean to like be revolutionary?" And I was like, "No, I really like my hair and I didn't think that was a huge deal, but I liked it that much that I wrote that song in the shower, and but then as I think a lot of times the contextualization of my life in the world that doesn't want me to make any noise
Mm.
is very political, and I think as artists, a lot of us I think something with women's jam I've learned a lot, and my experiences dealing with other women, because it's so rare to see other women in the driver's seat. You'll see
Mm.
women singing, you'll see them at the gig, but a
Mhm.
lot of times they're not making the calls, or they're not the music director, even if sometimes for their own stuff, their own songs, and they're not the music director, they're not making the calls.
Yep.
I myself have been in that position where I hadn't developed a competence in music to be able to talk to all these different guys about play this or play that. And I also, the skepticism that men tend to look at you like you're a girl, you don't know anything. Like that
Mhm.
energy was there from high school. I remember I was in a band with this guy and he was like, I need you to play an A chord. And I was like, this is an A chord. And he was like, no, it's not. And I'm like, I am a trained musician. I'm going to tell you this is an A chord. Like this is,
Mhm.
and he was like, "No, like, it's not," and I was just like, "This," like, I was like, "Am I," and I looked at the other musicians who were, men, and they were like, what is he
Yeah.
doing?"
Yeah.
But it was so, like, totally comfortable for him. He didn't even question himself,
Yep.
despite the fact that he had barely gone to school, and I had been 7 years trained classical piano. It was just
Mm.
like, "Oh."
I had a very similar experience where I was in a rehearsal with these guys that wanted to like jam with me after something, and I said, "We're gonna do Baby I Love You by Aretha. It's in A." And then you like they were playing and they played something wrong, and I was like, "You go to the four chord here." And the guy had said before, "Well, I haven't played this before, but I've heard it, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "I've been playing it forever." But I'm just the singer, you know? And so there was a part where I was like, we go to the four here. And he's like, no, we don't. And I was like, yeah, the four. That's what we do. And he's like, no. And then he literally argued with me. I told him, let's listen to the recording. We're in A, right? And I was like, the bass player played the note. And I said, what is that? He said, it's a D. And I was like, oh, so it's the four? And they were like, he literally didn't apologize, nothing, just like, this shit happens to women all the
Mhm.
time, especially singers, because they assume if you're just singing as a woman, you especially don't know anything.
You're not a musician, you're a
Yes,
singer.
and, like, they
Yeah.
assume you just never went to school, which is, like, there are a fair, and to be fair, I think there are a fair number of people who don't actually study, and so they don't know,
Right.
but there is an assumption, like, a God-given right, like, I know, even if I have never listened to the song, or, like, even if I barely know the song, I must know. I must know more than
Mm.
her, like, it's right? So when it comes to, like, resistance and art, right, as a woman, just having a voice sometimes is the thing, is having it's like, it's too much, like, mentally, like, it
Mhm.
sometimes it really boggles my mind, like, I'm just like, "This is not even we're not even in 1st grade. This is kindergarten. Like, kindergarten, I know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Kindergarten, this is the chord." And I'm like, "Wow, we're still having this fight. I am in my 30s. Like, what are we doing?"
Mm.
Yeah.
And so, but, what's interesting too is that, as time has gone on and I've become a known musician. Oh, like, you play at Lincoln Center. Like, oh, you've played at Joe's Pub. Like, people know who you are. People have listened to my tracks and they sound smart. And now, oh, Olivia's a genius. She knows what she's talking about. She's so killing that. I'm like, oh, that's so incredible that you feel that way now. And to be clear, it's not even that these are the same people, but it's
Mm.
interesting how that flip happens, because it's the same thing that happens to people like Esperanza Spalding, where now
Mm.
you're this object of sexual desire because you're
Mm.
smart and you
Mm.
know what you're doing, but you're still being objectified. Like, you're
Yep.
Mhm.
now, because now they're like, "She has invented the bass." You know what I mean? And now they're like, "I just everything she does." Like, and I'm like, "I'm a person. She's a person." Like,
Right.
I've met her. She's a very nice person. She's a
Mhm.
person. She has opinions. She does stuff. It's cool. Like, and I think it becomes a really interesting problem, because also when it comes to creating art as resistance, I think we've come into a world now where this is so, like, people just kinda say that, like, even, like, I feel like in the 2010s, like, early 20 teens, we were like, "Yeah, I'm fighting for whatever," and people would use this language of social justice and, like, I'm like, political, like, the personal is political, and people would say
Mm,
things like this, and I'm like, "Okay, but we have to, like, really interrogate that, like, everything is not. Everything you're
mm,
doing is not resistance. It's okay! Like, that's
Mhm.
okay." Like, I don't think we have to. I think it's really important as artists to remember that we curate ourselves. I write thousands of songs. I don't play them all. I
mm,
choose them for the time. I choose them for the era. I choose them for what I think is needed. And
Mhm.
so it's okay, even if, yes, if part of your music is a lot of my music is about creating joy, like, because having joy is a needed, necessary part of being able to survive this
mm,
time. But at the same time, like, I have a song about gentrification, right? And, like, it's fun, and people are always like, "I'm a native New Yorker," and they're bopping along, having a great time, but I'm giving you joy, and I'm injecting the truth in the middle.
mm,
Mm.
mhm,
I think that's important to remember. We can do that, like, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine. I'm not gonna just give you the medicine. I'm
mm,
not. Some people do that, and that's okay. Like, if you're like, "All I'm gonna do is read you down a list of the problems," like, that is a needed role.
mm,
There are different roles in this ongoing battle with these structures that be. There are so
mm,
many roles. There are
mm,
so many roles that an artist can take. An artist is healer. If your music is designed to heal, which a lot of I tend to take that role in my art, is like my music is designed to, like, bring peace, bring rest, bring what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, bring the kind of, like, when for those that are grieving, to
like
bring them.
respite?
Yeah,
Mm,
respite, yes,
mm,
Mm.
that's a great word. Bring respite, exactly. Some of my songs are designed to do that.
mm,
Some of my songs are designed to inform, that you can be an informer. You're talking about the issues at hand and naming them so that when they're named, it's available for people to say for themselves.
mm,
Like, "Oh, I haven't been able to put together why I feel this way, but you just crystallized that for me."
mhm, mhm.
I think these are all really different roles. Like, and like,
Yeah.
a musician as, I think a revolutionary leader. There are
Mm,
people who, like, I think there's that kind of rage against the machine type energy. Like,
mhm,
I'm gonna bring, like, aggression. I'm going to power the movement in this
mhm,
way. That's a needed role. And I think everyone has a place. Everyone has a space.
Mm.
I truly believe that one of the problems of revolutions in general is when people and capitalism has this problem a lot, which is we compartmentalize and we say, I only do this. I only do
mhm,
that, right? Like, if it I'm gonna get really nerdy for a second. When capitalism first began, part of the thing that it made it such a revolution was someone could take one thing, a product, and divide it into 10 pieces and have 10 people work on one thing and then
Mhm.
put it together faster because it would be faster. If you make
mm,
a gun and sorry, why is that the example? But if you make a gun and that was the example we used when I was in school, which is weird.
mm,
The example used to be, okay, it used to be that one person made a gun and it would take them like 7 days or whatever it was to craft this thing. But then if you could separate all the parts, like, okay, my job is just to make the handle, and my job is just to make the revolving piece, and then my part, and like, right
mhm,
now, you've got 5 people working on one gun in theory, but they are actually working on one piece of it, so they can do it so much faster. So in that same time, you've shaved off time, right?
mhm,
But the problem is none of those people know how to make a gun.
mm, mm,
Right? They can only make I only know how to make a handle. So, like,
mhm,
each of those people is on in one hand, they're faster, but on the other hand, they actually don't have a complete holistic sense of the thing.
mhm,
Um, and so
mm,
I
Right.
think what happens sometimes that, like, we get these sort of expedited versions of art. We get these sort of siloed things. We're like, "Oh, I'm just doing this. I only do this. I only feel comfortable in this world."
mm,
Whereas if you're thinking of yourself as a holistic person, right? Like, how could I not be making resistance music, living in the
Mm.
world I live in? Like, I was watching, I watched and I commented on your post, Emily, that
mm,
song. What I loved about your song that you performed You said like, the first thing he says, like, "I live in in an apartment that's too small," or something like that?
I live in a tiny place, don't have any extra space. My living room is where I sleep at night.
And now the funny thing about that is, like, that lyric is something that, like, it's like, "Oh, that's just a statement," but I'm like, when you say that, anyone who lives in New York is like, "Yes. Yes, I know what you're talking about." And that's actually for me, like, that can be a statement of war. Like, I live in a tiny place and I don't have enough space, and I live in a living room, and there's something wrong with that. Like, do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like there are ways in which we are all grappling with it. We're all
Mm,
grappling with living in this time, and we can address it. I think artists' job is to address. We don't necessarily have to have solutions. If you think you have one, I support you. Fantastic. Me personally, I know that my one of my greatest skills is to restate the issue in a
mm,
way that is compelling emotionally to other
mm,
people.
Mm.
mhm.
That's the gig. That's the gig.
This
Yeah.
is like there's so much that you're sharing with us, and that is like I've heard a lot of things that I wanna, like, recap a couple highlights because so first of all, just existing as a human being with an experience that is a marginalized group by, like any art you make is rebellion of some kind.
'Cause you're not supposed to be one of the visible ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
It's
gonna be yeah.
and so just by existing, you're opening yourself up to criticism, especially when, as artists, we're really just trying to express our most genuine self, and then we're putting it out there, and people are acting like it's an act of warfare just because it exists. So the feeling that we're getting from people sometimes that is like when I make a new thing, I'm like ready to be attacked because that's what
Mm.
happens to a lot of people who are making anything. And then it's personal, so it feels like a very personal attack. Sometimes it's hard to just keep that going. Another thing is in times where we can feel the collective group of humans really struggling.
Mhm.
We also see people get put on blast for not being outraged enough in their art or not being, attacky or like, strong enough. And some of us are like, I need a laugh today. So
Mhm.
I'm going to like make a thing because I think other people need to laugh today too. But it feels like we're all supposed to now, like, just put the armor on, go in and, like, preach and yell and be the resistant person, but that's not what we need. We need all different kinds of art. That is so huge. I mean, like, Carrie and I just made a really dumb couple videos that when she was in town, and it was, like, inauguration day and after,
You
and
mean
it was
Martin
like
Luther King Day? Ha, yeah.
oh my
Yes.
god.
Trauma.
Yeah, oh
So
my
funny.
god. So many layers.
Yep. Yep.
Uh But I was like, we were worried posting those silly things. People are going to be like, you don't give a shit about what's going on. It's like, no, we do. But I mean, I really appreciate your perspective and how you're layering this because there's just so much there. It's like, we don't really need to start piling guilt on ourselves on top of already trying to show up and that being hard enough, you know?
Mhm.
So thank you for that. That's
Course. I really think it's really hard because I think there's a nuance, which okay, my thing is, I'm just like, pick a thing that you want to deal with, and then pick a way you want to contribute, and then do that, and then
Mhm.
be a human being. And that's enough. Like, that's
mhm,
enough. The gig is enough because the truth of the matter is it's weird because we can't actually do like I was saying, that compartmentalize doing a little bit of this, like, I'm a little bit fighting for women, I'm a little bit fighting for this, and I'm a little bit doing Palestine, and I'm a little bit doing the right, like, because it feels right now like there are so many, like, the entire world is on fire. The
Yeah.
world is
I
on
mean,
in
literally,
every liter
in
like,
some
Yeah.
yeah,
in so many places. It is
yeah.
on fire. LA, the Congo, it's like half of Angola or something
Oh my god.
crazy, like a lot of Brazil. Like, so there's like everyone but what's interesting is, like, if we think about the concept of, like, sustainable living, local living, if everyone minded their business where they were at, meaning minding your business is not ignoring, I mean literally paying attention and doing work in the place that they were at, that would help so much. That would help so much if every single person who lived on your block was as engaged about what was going on your block as the people who are ruining your block, and in whatever way that is. If it's,
Mm.
people littering or like my dad, for example, where he lives is like actually, um, it's kind of like on the drug route. So a
Mm.
lot of people do drug deals like in front of his house, like
Oh,
it's
shit.
like in the South. And so the interesting piece of this is like, okay, so you'll be in the neighborhood just in general. And it's like, okay, but if you are collaborating collectively, then you're gonna be like, "Hey, did you see that?"
Mhm.
And we can get very into like, do we need police? Do we need like these larger superstructures to support what we're doing? I don't want to get into that because I feel like that's a whole other hour of
Yeah. Oh,
conversation.
yeah, yeah.
But if I was engaged, like if you have a block captain, if you have a block association, right? And you were showing up the way that you talk on the internet,
Mm.
you would be doing so much more
Mm.
for your world than you think, right? Like we've trivialized the doing of things and being present where you are for this
Mm.
sort of
Mm.
hyper anxious, omnipresent parasocial experience.
I
Mhm.
have goosebumps. It's
Yep.
so true. It's so true on like the front of making a difference and also as an artist. Because how many of us sit on social media and we're like, okay, I have to plan how I show up because I have to blow up and I have to do, and then we don't go to our local jams. We don't go to our writers' nights. We don't go do that shit because we're too busy trying to be like, how am I going to make this huge impact? And guess what?
Mhm.
You're making zero because you're doing nothing. Like, if you could just, like, I just love what you said. It's like, show up in your neighborhood.
Show up where it makes a difference, 'cause the joke is we all show up to Instagram, and the only
Ooh.
person benefiting from that is Instagram and Meta.
Ooh.
Like, what are we doing? And the number of times I've had this conversation over the last 10 years, my dad used to always say, make your mailing list," and I was like, "Oh, dad," but then I did it. I did it. I made my mailing list, and it's probably got like 400 people on it, but those are 400 people who are my people,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We have again, we've traded gold for paper money, right? Like, that's the
Mm,
joke, right? We have all this, like, we have a lot of visuals that seem like, oh, I have 5,000 followers, but you can't get 50 people in a room, but you have 5,000 followers.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
What does that have to do with anything? Like, it means that obviously some of your work resonates with people at large, but you yourself you cannot even harness that energy the way that you would like to in the real if I turned off I truly oh my god, I'm like getting I this is my like
Yeah. Let's
disaster
go.
prep my disaster prep personality is coming out like
Yeah.
my first my since I was a kid, since 2003 there was a big blackout in New York and I wasn't there. My mom was there and I happened to just be visiting other relatives. And my mom was like, nobody knew what to do. Like, people were just like walking around lost. Like, what do I do right now? And this was 2003. We
Whoa.
didn't even
Mm,
have the internet the way we have it now. We didn't have
mm,
smartphones. So at the time, but I remember she was like, we're grilling in the park because the park had those like grilling stations. We're
mhm,
grilling all of our food from the fridge and we're just handing it out and we're doing da 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 da. Community activism, being
mm,
local, being present, right? If the internet went down today, if the electricity went down today, people would not know what to do with themselves because they have not cultivated a life in real time.
mm,
And, we can lament this all the time, but again, here as artists, we have this powerful ability to make being present actually exciting and fun and
mm,
enjoyable. Like, people will come to a show. Like, they will. Like, I know that a lot of people don't right now, but if the internet was out, they need something to do, they'll be at a show. Like, they're
mhm,
gonna
Yeah.
and so, like, Tuesday, I performed for an interfaith community, a bunch of, leaders of interfaith congregations in New York, and
mm,
they had this conference, whatever, And I performed for them, and they were like, "Oh, this is so amazing." But, like, these people were getting together and needed music in that moment.
Mhm.
Right, we don't you never think, "Does a pastor need music?" Yes, the pastor needs music. Yes, she does. You know, does the rabbi need music? Yes, she does. Does, like do there are so many people. Do seniors need music? Yes, they do. Like, do children need music? Yes, they do. The role of being an artist in a community, if you don't piecemeal it out into I'm a content creator and I'm a this and I'm a that. The role of the artist in the community is like a lightning rod for
Mm,
spiritual energy. And
mm,
we literally squander that all the time because we forget that this is a sacred role.
Ooh.
mm, mm.
Mm. Yeah.
Oh, man. I felt the tears, you know? They were,
Mhm.
like, coming. I'm like, not
All the preacher's kids take a
yeah.
moment. Everyone
Oh my
take a
god.
moment.
Yep.
I know
Seriously.
I am too. So I'm like, we're, we're locked in. I know.
Yeah, oh my god.
There's so much to do, right? You could do so many things even
Yes.
within your own community, even if you kept it
Yes.
local.
Yes.
You could
Especially.
especially you could blow yourself out,
Yes. Yes.
on all the things. How in the midst of that do we keep ourselves okay, right? Because we're not useful to anybody if we can't first have ourselves be
The
okay.
oxygen mask has to go on you first, yeah.
Yes. I whoo, this is the part that I've been, like, grappling with for at least 7 years,
Mm,
because I injured my voice when I was in college, and I spent a lot of my singing career has actually been me trying
mhm,
to sing, like, having, like, a lot of difficulty, but people loving it, and I'm like, "I can barely do this, but
mm,
okay." Um, and so I've grappled with this in so many ways, and then also turns out turns out a girl's got scoliosis. So, like,
Oh.
turns out a girl's got scoliosis and an iron deficiency. You
mm,
and a lot of us do. You probably don't even realize how much it affects you, but it affects my hands and my ability to hold things, and it affects, like just like I had to, like, leave my job because I couldn't do the job because I couldn't
mm.
pick things up and hold them, and,
Mm.
it was cool, and
Yeah, yeah, what a great
you
time.
Love
know
that,
Yeah.
love
well,
that.
and the injury started I'm gonna just give a very short synopsis so that you can have an idea of what happens if you don't. Let me put it that way. What do we do? We have to my father is really coming up in this. I'm so surprised, like,
It
shout
all
out
it
to
all comes
him.
back to our
Yeah.
parents, it really
Right,
does.
right.
Got
But
really good advice.
he's got well, my father was always and both of my parents, my mom was a teacher, and being a teacher is a performing that's a performance. Like, you're every day,
Oh, yeah.
you're on the stage, you're with the kids,
Mm,
you're, like, very it's very much they are vocal athletes, just like
mm,
singers, and people don't think about that. My mom lost her voice for, like, 2 weeks, and it was a disaster. Like, I remember that
yep,
was just like, "What do we do?"
yep,
My father is a speaker as well, so he would go around and, he's always putting on performances. My parents, that's the family business. One of the things he has always said to me that I think I it's still just really great advice. It's keeping the main thing the main thing. And it's I have really had to interrogate what is the main thing
mm,
over and over again, and I think I ongoingly interrogate now, like, as a practice with
Mm.
myself. The main thing for me as a person and as an artist, all that, is to maintain my general well-being and my capacity to be present
Mm.
mm.
in all the ways that that looks. So,
Wow.
ha like, it sounds so simple, but
That's
it's
so
Oh my
hard.
so
god.
hard.
It's
It's like,
the hardest
"What?"
thing.
It's like a full-time job.
Babe, it
Yes.
is. It's ca and I said, "If we were any good at this, we'd get out alive," but we're not. So
Mhm.
we just don't. We just don't. Like, I do think that a big part for me is so simple. Do I sleep enough? Do I eat enough?
Mhm.
Like, and this is like it really is like, am I in balance? Because sometimes, like, look, it's gonna happen. We're artists. You're gonna have a weird, like, 48-hour time period where you just can't sleep because you're writing or something's weird or you have back-to-back gigs and you're driving down the road and then you sleep for a second and you get on a gig and you're back. But
Mhm.
have I built in the recuperation? Like,
Mm.
have I? Athletes, literally, this is their whole thing, right? They spend their whole lives, or their entire careers, I should say. They spend their entire careers saying, okay, all right, I gotta work on the thing, expand my capacity to do the physical activity, and then rest.
Mhm.
And then on the day it's time to show up, I gotta really show up. I gotta get my head in the game. So when I, as an artist, that there are different parameters, but I still think that the concept holds true, right? Like
Mhm.
the organizing principle still holds true,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is, 1, taking care of, like, your just day-to-day ability to function. So if my artistic life doesn't let me eat every day,
Mm.
that's not a good artistic life for me. That's not the
Mhm.
right amount of balance.
Mhm.
Right.
Like, I used to do gigs, like, I used to be a teaching artist, and I used to have to commute, like, 2 hours for $40 an hour to do a 2-hour
Mm.
after-school program, and
Mhm.
I was blowing out my voice, I was, breaking up my back, I was doing all that, and I was like, "This is not a good use of my time."
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
because and now it's a holy mission to show up for kids and teach and da da da, but I'm
Mhm.
not the right person.
Right. I think that we as artists believe this lie that's like, A, I must suffer for my art or else I'm
Mhm.
not a real artist, which is not it's not true. It's something that has been perpetuated over and over and over again, and that belief needs to be broken. And then number 2, if it almost and I've experienced this for myself where it's like, well, if I take care of myself and I'm okay and I at least am maintaining a sense of well-being, I feel guilty about it. That's not me suffering for the cause. That's not me going out because other people are suffering so much more, and it's
Mhm.
almost disrespectful to them if I maintain a sense of well-being.
I'm being selfish now.
Exactly. Like that so I feel myself coming up because I'm totally with you on like that you gotta show up for you first before you can be anything to anybody else.
Mhm.
But then
And
again
encourage other people to show up for themselves, right? Because I
exactly.
have to be the space a lot of times. So as an organizer, like the women's gym is a great example. As an organizer and someone who, like, works with people who volunteer their time and their energy, sometimes as a leader, I have to say, "Is that actually a good plan for you?
Mm.
Mm,
Is that a good plan for you? Are you sure that's gonna work?" Because we have such pressure on ourselves to show up in these ways that we're like, "I have to, I have to." No, you don't have to do jack shit.
Mm.
When my great aunt used to say, "I don't have to do anything but stay black and die." Like, fair enough. Like, fair enough. So, like, I really reject the have to, but
Mm.
I also know that a lot of times it's not even a have to, it's that you want to. You
mhm,
have a
Mhm.
heart for
mhm,
giving. You want to be everywhere.
mhm,
But
Mhm.
I think the question is, like, where do you need to be?
mhm,
Mm.
Where do they need you? Like where are you, that, the concept, that Japanese concept of ikigai? Where
Mhm.
is your unique talent, the need of what's going on, the thing that you're able to, your expertise, etc. Where do those meet?
mhm.
Mhm.
And it might be something you're not expecting. Like, I used to, at my church, there's, like, the guy who's the sound ministry guy, right? The sound ministry is the guy who comes in, turns on all the lights, plugs in all the things. I don't think he was a sound engineer. I don't think he did that for a living, but that was his way of giving, and he had to show up
Mhm.
every Sunday, and because if he didn't show up, there was nobody else, and what was interesting was, like, when the young folks were trying to take kinda, like, support the church at that time, I was, like, in college, and we were like, Is there a backup person for this guy?" Like, do you see, like,
Right.
you could be the second in command. That's a role that might be needed. Like, my job is to be the person that when you call, I'm around. I'm the second call. That's
Mhm.
a really powerful role to be, and everyone doesn't play the same role. Like, you just and I get that sometimes who you think you should be, who you want to be, but then who
Mhm.
you are. Like, and I don't think it's a simple answer, but it's not an easy one
Mm,
because it requires you to talk to yourself. Art and business are spiritual practices.
Mm.
mm,
You have to consistently engage with yourself about where you're going,
mm,
how you plan to get there. Like um something that's been coming up a lot because of all of the huge upheaval politically that's happening is I'm like, how can I be a space for people to be practical and safe in a
mm,
small community? Like, so I've my one of my decisions is like, okay, I'm gonna pick a handful of people that are my people, and like we're gonna rap about this together. We're
Mm.
gonna have a protocol together. We're gonna think about emergency issues together. We're gonna choose to organize together in these particular ways. It's
mm,
very important to remember that organizing is something that actually is more powerful the more the relationships the stronger the intimate relationships are.
mm-hmm.
Mm.
Like,
Yep.
I wanna, like, Adrienne Marie Brown, if you don't know who she is, you should totally check her out. She
Mm,
has great memes, but also she wrote a book called Emergent Strategy,
mm,
which is about she's looking at how the natural world can inform how people build, structures and organizations better.
Oh,
mm.
that's cool. We'll put that in the show notes for all
Yeah.
of our listeners. If you're interested in checking out that book, you can just go to our show notes.
So, in order to form those meaningful, small, being where you are groups, it really, again, is coming back to like you have to know yourself and what part you play in that. And the answer typically is you boiling down and boiling down and boiling down and boiling down until you're the center of your ikigai, if you know about it, like you said, you know that thing and that person so well that you don't have to keep. I mean, this is hitting home for me in so many ways. It's like for years I've just been running around trying to be like do everything, and I got to make the money and do this, and people like when I do this, so I got to do that, and then I'm going to okay, like but I need to do this for myself. I think, do I like this? Like it's been like that frantic energy, and the more I've let go,
Mm.
boiled down, taking care of my shit, the more I'm like, oh, this is where I'm actually needed. This is where I actually align. And these are the folks that I think I can do this with. Like, instead of like, I'm going to meet everybody. And I don't know, I would meet all. It doesn't, that frantic shit is not helpful. And though it feels like we have to do everything, we're more useful when we do less.
Yeah.
Mm.
But doing less well, like, really showing up
Mhm.
there. Like, you know what I
Ooh,
mean? Because
yeah.
I also don't want people to think just being like, like, "My life is resistance." Like, I 'cause
Yeah.
there are people who are gonna hear what we're saying and think, "Oh my god, I just feel, like, so empowered to just be." And you're like,
And lay on my
"Okay."
couch.
You know
Yeah,
what
no,
I'm
no, no.
saying? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
different roles for different folks, right? And so it's like, I think that for example, also we have to zoom out a little bit in the cultural context. Who are you? I am a Black woman from New York. Okay. I am a Caribbean American woman from New York. I'm a child of people from the South, from New York. I am a Spanish speaker. I am these things actually impact what I'm able to do and how I'm able to show up. Right. If, I've had to tell people and because, like, I live in a multicultural community, and especially music, ironically, there's a lot of people making Black music who are not Black. And that's fine, like, I love them, but the context for a lot of people is just getting real now. And I'm like,
Mm,
Mm.
"I want you to know" that someone was, like, freaking out, like, "Ah, like, what do we do? Blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "You're living in my world now, because I live
Mm.
in a police state." Like, I wanna be clear, I've always lived in a police state.
Mhm.
I have never not lived America's been a police state for hundreds of years for some
Mm,
people.
Mhm.
And that group of people changes. Sometimes it's Black people. There used to be the Irish. There used to be, like there have always been people who are targets of the state who know what is possible, what the state is capable of doing,
mm,
and
Yeah.
how willing the rest of the society is to aid and abet the state practices. Yeah.
Mhm.
mhm,
That's so you have to calibrate yourself accordingly to where you are. What I'm gonna do as a Black woman, what you're gonna do as a white woman, what someone's gonna do as a white man, what's like someone's gonna do as a trans person, what someone's gonna do, like those are all very different, very, very different. And we cannot act like it's a cookie cutter one size fits all answer.
Mhm.
mm,
What I need to do to show up, me like, Doechii showing up on the Grammys,
mhm,
being a dark-skinned Black woman from the South, doing the thing, like, that would mean something different than other people. Like, it's each of these things is so it's actually a really beautiful thing. We are
mhm,
so unique. Our Who we are is so uniquely suited for whatever it is that we're supposed to do, that even where we were born is a part of the equation. You know
Yeah.
if there are people, for example, who are like, "I've been a military brat, I've traveled all over the world." So you understand what it means to travel, so maybe you can help other people understand certain things that they need to do if they have to figure out a safety plan, an escape plan.
mm.
Yeah.
The more you know yourself, take care of that human being and the role that you can play, the more effective you can be in your community because that's where all the change is made.
Mhm.
That's what I'm hearing. This is this is so amazing, Olivia. Your energy, just who you are as a human being, is such a blessing, really,
Mm.
truly. And we are like, we could just talk to you forever.
Yeah, we could do this a
Just
really
like,
long time. I'm
I
like,
mean,
I'm so locked in. I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's go." Like
let's go. Let's,
because I
yes.
can go we can go down to specifics. We can get very philosophical, outward, but I also hope that this is a blessing
Mm.
It's
to the people
huge.
who listen, because, this is like the first step of 1,000 steps. It's
Mhm.
always, and life is like that. Like, it's just an ongoing, it's an iterative process. Like, we're gonna keep having the same conversations. We're gonna keep interacting with ourselves. Like, what am I doing? And look, and based on the day, it's gonna change.
Mhm.
Yep.
But that's the gift. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
actually a gift.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. Oh, thank you.
Yes. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much
much.
for being
This has
with
been
us.
awesome.
We're honored to have you. Thank you. And you check out Olivia's music, Olivia K and the Parkers, and just be in Olivia's orbit because it's just a blessing to be. Um, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I love you guys.
Honestly, dear listener.